Good evening and welcome to Bolton Carer Support, first of many discussions on all things care. My name is Harry and I will be your host for this evening. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Bolton Carer Support, we are a local charity originally set up in 1994 who offer confidential support and information service to carers. We are an independent charity supporting carers of the age of 18 who live in Bolton or who care for someone living in Bolton. So this evening, I am delighted to be joined by Rochelle Bugg, who has recently released a book titled Handle with Care, which goes into detail of her life as a young carer, the loss of both her parents, and how she learned to live again. In 2011, Rochelle started blogging about life as a young carer, following her mother's diagnosis with a terminal brain tumor. Having already lost her father to cancer when she was 14, she noticed a lack of support for young people going through what she was and began sharing her experiences as a 20-something caring for her mom and keeping an eye on her two younger sisters. Over the last decade, Rochelle has appeared widely in the media, talking about what it's like to be a carer and how to heal after a bereavement. As a result of her work, Rochelle was a Cosmopolitan Ultimate Woman of the Year finalist and crowned winner of the Right Stuff at the London Book Fair 2017 for her memoir, Handle with Care. Good evening, Rochelle. It's a pleasure to have you on the platform.
Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
That's fine. It's a beautiful book that you've written, and I think a lot of what you say resonates with me and my journey of caring, and I implore any carer to purchase a copy. So let's start with a bit of your background into your family life and what happened before we explore and dive deeper into your book.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was kind of, I guess, a carefree 24-year-old. I was living in Leeds at the time. I recently finished university, was living with my boyfriend, and just kind of worrying about the usual things you do as a young person, going out and counting down till payday and all that kind of thing. And then fairly out of the blue, I got a text from my youngest sister. She was still at school at the time, living at home, and she said, Mum went to the doctors for a doctor's appointment and they've taken her to hospital. They think she's had a stroke. So all of a sudden, as I'm sure any carer or anyone that's ever had a loved one with a diagnosis, suddenly you feel like your heart drops and your brain goes all over the place and think, what do I do? So I got on the first train home, went to see my mum. By that point, they'd sent her home. They said, we think you've had a mini stroke, but you'll be fine in a couple of months. Here are some exercises, come for a follow-up appointment in a couple of weeks. And so at first I thought, I'll just be home for kind of a week, 10 days, just to keep an eye on mum and make sure she's okay. But fairly quickly, I'd noticed it had probably been about a month before that I'd last been home to see her. And I'd noticed even from then, just something wasn't quite right. And I just had this gut feeling. I was like, there's something not quite right with mum. And the more I was researching about strokes online, the less the diagnosis made sense to me, because there were all these other things. For example, she was having like really bad hiccups for kind of 3 hours a day, and it would stop for half an hour, then it would start again, and like her personality seemed a bit different. And so I decided to leave my job and to move back home because, like I said, something just wasn't sitting right. And after a few months of going backwards and forwards to the stroke clinic, we weren't really getting any further. They were saying, maybe your mum's depressed, so that's why she's not getting any better. She's not putting as much effort into her stroke recovery. And something about that really rang alarm bells with me. So I made a private appointment for her, and within 12 hours, we got the news that in fact she'd never had a stroke and she had a brain tumor. And I think, at that moment, it was so life-altering, not only because of what was happening with my mum, but because I'd already lost my dad to cancer when I was 14. And so it was this awful kind of almost like two films playing at once. Like I was going through finding out that, my mum had cancer, and we fairly soon found out it was terminal, while at the same time replaying and knowing everything that had happened with my dad.
I mean, how is that? 1 minute you just graduated, your role changed drastically. 1 minute you're a student, and then having to give up some of your own ambitions and dreams and becoming a full-time carer.
I think it's, you know, at the time people would sometimes say to me, oh, it's such a good thing to do, or, you know, what a brave thing you've done. But I know for me, it didn't necessarily feel like a choice. It just felt instinctive. Of course, I was going to be there for my mum, to be there for her the way that she had for my dad while he was dying, you know, the way that she'd brought me and my sisters up by herself. I didn't really give it a second thought. And I think as a carer, that's kind of a blessing and a curse, that so often you don't question it. But that also means, I think sometimes you don't stop to give yourself the recognition that you deserve. Because, you know, even calling myself a carer, I really didn't for a long time, because I thought, oh, that's someone who works in a care home, or that's someone who has a qualification in social work or something. And it wasn't until I kept going to appointments or GP surgeries and they kept saying, are you her carer? And I'd say, well, no, I'm just her daughter. And I think that's so common with carers. You're like, oh, I'm just this, I'm just that. And really, it's the complete opposite, because everything you do as a carer just is the last word you should be using. You know, it's the longest job description in the world when you think about all of the things that you have to take on. So yeah, it was absolutely life turned upside down in a split second. And I think, you know, now if things ever go wrong or things go a bit wobbly, I always tell myself, okay, think how quickly everything went wrong that day when you found out about mum's diagnosis. So if everything can go wrong that quickly, everything can go right that quickly. And I think that's something that's come from caring that has maybe been a positive for me, to think, okay, it can go wrong that quickly, it can go right that quickly. So just keep going, and, you know, hopefully there'll be something good along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was exactly the same. You know, I didn't see myself as a carer. It was just a case of, you know, I'm the only son, there's no one else, I've got no help and support. So yeah, all that responsibility is now on my shoulders.
And you kind of also feel like you don't want to complain or to make too much of a fuss. Yeah, because you don't want to sound as if you don't want to look after them. I don't know if that is the same for you. It's kind of a delicate balance.
Yeah, I mean, I was
difficult. Yeah.
Did you see it as a fundamental duty to look after your mom the same way your parents have looked after you?
Yeah, it's such a strange, I'm not sure I can quite put the word on it. I suppose in the same way a parent would with a newborn, maybe, that yes, it felt like a duty, but not as in, you know, you're forced into doing this, like, you know, not in the same way that it's like you have to do this, there's no other option. It was kind of, it felt a duty, but also, I guess, an honor, really, because I still can't think of anything that I could ever have done, any holiday I could have bought my mum, any fancy car, like there was nothing I don't think you can do for someone more special than to be there for them when they need it most. So, you know, I'm not saying it's strange. I think caring is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, and yet also the most special. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to care for my mum, but also wouldn't rush, you know, if someone said, oh, would you like to, you know, go through this again? You'd be like, no, I don't know how I survived it the first time. But yeah, I definitely duty, but like a duty that was gratefully received, if that makes any sense.
Well, what qualities did you think it's brought out in terms of caring for your mum?
It's really interesting. At the time, I think I was so busy and so frazzled. I was like, I don't think I've got any qualities whatsoever. But now that time has passed, and particularly returning to work, something that I'm really keen to speak to businesses about and also to speak to other carers about is almost like the superpowers that you have to develop as a carer, but organization, the time management, the negotiation. Like, you don't even realize how many skills you are developing. You know, with my mum, you'd have to persuade her to take this tablet because I knew she didn't like that one because it was too big, and then I'd be like, oh, I'll get you this afterwards. And you know, or you coax her into the car when the last thing she felt like was going for treatment, and juggling appointments, and you become kind of a social secretary for people that want to come round. And you know, there's just so much that I think you don't realize you're just automatically taking on and doing. And that resilience, that determination, you know, now when people at work might say they're stressed and like, oh, we've got this deadline, and I think, no, I know what true stress is, and I know what a true deadline is. You know, I know what it's like to have no more time after a certain period. And so I think it really helps you put into perspective what life is all about. And you know, that definitely is something that I can, as much as I didn't see it at the time, I can see the skills that you develop as a carer.
Okay. You talked about superpowers. I'll tell you mine. We'll start off with yours. What are the three main superpowers that you've...
Superpowers. Yeah. I would say, probably only got one, no, but organisation now. So my two younger sisters, as I mentioned, the youngest was still at school when my mum first fell ill. So the time and the precision that it took to get my mum showered, dressed, she needed certain medication, then get my sister, take her to school, come back, take my mum to radiotherapy. But we all know, like, it can be really difficult transferring from the wheelchair to the car and making sure everything in the house was running on time. So that one was a massive one for me. And I know now, like, in my own house, I'm like, no, everything has to be in its little boxes and organized, and you know, I haven't got any time to waste. I need to know where everything is. So that's definitely one that has stayed with me since being a carer, and kind of lots of list writing, because I'd have so much going on in my head. So yeah, organizational queen. That's my that's my enduring superpower from my time as a carer, I think.
Anything else?
What else? I would say now, probably my superpower is from looking at what I didn't do as a carer and realizing, or not realizing, how important it was to look after me. So I think now, kind of preserving my energy, preserving my peace, understanding it's not selfish to look after myself, and actually it's a positive to be able to kind of charge yourself up every day like you do your mobile phone in order to keep on going. I think might not be a superpower, but it was probably one of the most important lessons I learned, because as my mum's carer, everyone would use the oxygen mask analogy, which I'm sure you've heard, like, you know, when you're on a plane, always put your oxygen mask on before helping others. And I understood what people were trying to say to me. I just used to get so annoyed because I thought, my mum's dying. I'll hold my breath and put her oxygen mask on, or I'll put them both on. I've got two hands, I'll do it at the same time. And it didn't really sink in what they were trying to say. Whereas now I understand, you know, you wouldn't wait until your car breaks down before you fill up the tank with petrol. It's okay, you know, in fact, it's not only okay, it makes more sense to keep yourself topped up so that you can keep going. So that's definitely, you know, another enduring lesson. I want to know your superpowers. What are they?
My three are compassion, patience, and resilience. I think those are the three.
Yeah.
Because I'm still in a caring role, so, and I think them three qualities are amazing to have, and I think you can really sort of develop them when you actually start caring for an individual. So for me, patience, having the patience is, given in our society, everything's 100 miles an hour, especially if you've got your own life, you're working, just having that sort of time just to be patient with the person you're caring for. I think that's a remarkable sort of quality for any carer to start having that sort of compassion, because I think young, especially a lot of young individuals, they think that they're never going to get old, it's never going to happen to them. But everybody eventually has to get old. And
Yeah.
I think if especially young children, if they're seeing their parents care for their parents, that sort of sits with them, and it will serve them in good stead in the future. Well, I think. But on that, I think when we're talking about carers in our society, I think we've got a structural problem where carers are not really valued. You mentioned carers allowance in your book. I think it currently stands at £67.60 a week. How do you think we can change society so it values carers more, especially when unpaid carers save the UK £132 billion a year?
Yeah, I think, as with so many things, it's not until you go through it that you truly understand. Because I was probably guilty of this as well. If you said, "Oh, I'm a carer for my mum," you'd be like, "Oh, right, you pick her prescriptions up once a week, and you drop off a few groceries from the supermarket when you go, and if there's, I don't know, you might take her to a hospital appointment or something." And I don't think people realise the true extent, the emotional, the physical, the financial pressures and responsibilities that you have as a carer. And I honestly think, in terms of, if MPs were made to be, essentially a carer within a family setting for a week, say every 6 months, so that it stays fresh, so that they remember, so that they know the variety of things that people are doing. I do not think that anybody could do that for a week, see what it's genuinely like, if they then didn't prioritize reform in terms of support, practical support, mental health support, financial support, streamlining the system so that it's easier to access that support. I don't think it would happen, because I think it's all too easy to throw figures and numbers around, which are shocking, but then it takes away from the people, from the real stories that are there, and what it's like that you have to. I know I got to a stage where I was sleeping with a baby monitor in my room, so I could hear my mum in the night to take her to the toilet. I couldn't shower with the door closed, again, in case she needed me or in case she fell. I was cutting her food up, taking her to the toilet, getting her changed. And I don't think people realise how relentless it is. It's every day, 24 hours a day, for an indefinite period of time. And I just think, if we can do more work to let the population in general truly understand what is involved in being a carer, and not just the tasks, but the emotional labour that goes into things, the thinking ahead, the knowing, right, okay, no, it's that carer that's coming today. Oh no, I know my mum isn't too keen on that carer, so I know she'll probably hide her tablets after that one goes, so I need to make sure I'm back from this appointment quickly, because I know she'll have hidden her tablet underneath her pillow when that one asks her to do anything, or she'll say she's not hungry because she doesn't like the way that one makes a cup of tea, so she'll pretend she doesn't want one, but she does want one really. All of those things, there's just so much involved. And I think that, for me, would be the great thing, because I think once you've been a carer, once you've seen up close what that's like, there's no way you can, I don't think anyone with a soul can not care when you really know what it's like.
And so you were thrown in at the deep end as a carer, the isolation you had with having that thrust upon you. How did you juggle normal life with being there for the person you loved the most? As I recall, there isn't a guide or a manual telling you what you should and you should not be doing.
Yeah, and I think that's something I definitely struggled with, because so often in life, you buy some flat pack furniture or instructions for how to do it. You want to train to become a doctor, there's a clearly set path. And then suddenly you're put into this role with this massive responsibility of looking after the person you love most in the world. And you're like, who do task? What am I supposed to be doing? And yeah, just that massive sense of responsibility was definitely really difficult for me to deal with. And like you say, the isolation, I think partly for me, I resisted help for quite a while because I felt like I wanted to be able to do it myself. I felt like I was admitting defeat or that I wasn't trying hard enough, which obviously now I understand isn't true at all. But yeah, I definitely found it really tough, and I think that's in the end why I turned to writing, because it was something that I could do while I was still sat next to mum. I didn't need to leave the house. I think that was, for me, you know, I would worry if I was away from her too long, or if I went too far, I would, you know, I think, oh, what if something happens? I need to be able to get home quickly. So you kind of, I think friends might offer suggestions like, oh, go and have a break away. And I know it makes sense, but when you're in that bubble of being a carer, you kind of think, no, I've made this commitment to be there, and it's sometimes more hassle than it's worth to do anything too crazy, because part of you is still thinking, oh, what's going on, and that kind of thing.
And did you ever feel forgotten about and ignored as a carer?
Definitely, absolutely. I think, I know there is help out there, but I think just in general, being a carer, the amount of admin, the amount of appointments, the, you know, how much you have to squeeze into every day, I kind of let getting support slip to the bottom of the list. And yeah, I don't know. It's strange to look back, and I think there are probably things that I'd do differently, but it can sometimes be hard in the moment to kind of know what you should be doing.
What do you think organizations could do then?
I think being kind of more proactive, because I do remember getting a lot of leaflets, but after a while it all kind of merged into one. And I think as well, I would find with, you know, sometimes I would go with my mum to an appointment. They'd give me a leaflet, I'd read the leaflet, they'd direct me to a website. I'd go to the website, they'd say, call this number. And you just kind of end up chasing around. So I think for me, 24-hour support or a 24-hour means of getting in touch was really good. And even really simple things like not calling from a withheld number and having a number that you're able to call back, because I think I lost count of the amount of times that I would have arranged something for my mum, then they call you back to make an appointment or do something like that from a withheld number, or you miss it, but then you can't call the number back because it's kind of a government organization or something like that. And they all seem really tiny tweaks, but I think they would have made a big difference if there's the option. You know, some people prefer to speak on the phone, for some email is better, and just really making small changes like that. And then also being kind of a hub for information rather than just specializing in one thing. I know that I wish that I could just go to one place and they help me with everything, rather than, oh, okay, you know, I think I ended up with this massive list of numbers, like, oh, that's the person for equipment, but only bathroom equipment. That's the person for lifestyle equipment. Oh, but only if that's, but then the hospice also do some other bits. So, and you just think, oh my goodness, just can one person just sort this all out for me? Because I felt like I needed a PA a lot of the time.
How did you cope then with the feeling of hopelessness and feeling like you were not going to get that happy ever after then?
Yeah, I think, well, it was really difficult. And I think the problem was that a lot of the things that people suggest you do when you feel down or when you're upset, they don't really apply often to when you're a carer, because the situation is more serious. And so I would go on social media or read magazine articles about, you know, lighting a scented candle, having a green juice, going for a walk. And then I would expect them to fix something, which obviously is not going to fix anything. And so then I'd feel like, oh, I'm a failure because everyone else says, you know, when they drink green smoothies and do couch to 5K, that's, you know, really made them perk up and have loads more energy. And so now I understand that as a carer, you almost need to come to understand that you're never going to feel normal because it is such an abnormal situation. So there isn't going to be an easy fix, waving a magical wand. It's all about just finding tiny things that will maybe help 5% or help 10%. And whereas before that would have meant I would have thought, oh, they're useless, they're not helping. Now I understand you can't just look to one thing to make everything better. You've just kind of got to grab little bits as you go along, and hopefully you have enough little bits together to keep you moving forward.
How much support did you have then from your sisters, Hannah and Olivia?
Yeah, so my sisters were great, but at the same time, you know, they were in education and we were all going through a really difficult time. And I think as the eldest, again, kind of that instinct comes in that I knew how awful the situation was for me. And so I suppose part of me wanted to do as much as I could to protect them from some of the things that they didn't have to do them, because I thought, well, I'm struggling enough as it is and I'm the eldest, so I didn't want to pass it down to them. But yeah, I think it's one of those things. I don't think you'll find 3 closer sisters, but that doesn't mean we didn't still have all the usual sister arguments about, you know, that's my top, why have you taken that, and this, I know it's your turn to take the bins out, why haven't you done the washing up? So yeah, it was definitely an eventful few years, the 3 of us living together and looking after mum.
Did it bring you closer together? Are you still that close now?
Yeah, I think you develop this bond where you know that there's nobody else on the planet that knows what you 3 have been through except for you. And so there kind of becomes this unbreakable bond that even if, you know, you have a falling out or you move further apart, that's kind of, we always know that's surface level because that bond is so deep and we've shared, you know, such life-changing experiences together, the 3 of us, that, yeah, like I said, nothing can break that bond, however annoying I am to the 2 of them.
So how have your friends and family responded to the feelings you expressed in the book around being the spokesperson? Now they've had the chance to read the book, do you think they realize the impact of some of their decisions they made during the time you cared for your mum?
I think what is so difficult when you have a family member that's ill is that everybody needs support. And so, you know, in any other situation, say for example, I don't know, you lose your job or you're getting a divorce, you have the rest of your family to look to for support. Whereas when you are caring for somebody, or, you know, in our case, knowing that mum was going to die, everybody was grieving. So it's kind of like everybody's turning their head to everybody else, looking for that support. And I think naturally that makes tensions flare up, and it can be so difficult because everybody's at such a heightened emotional state. But I think, you know, I think it's almost impossible to go through something like that and not have family disagreements or people wanting to do things this way or that way. But yeah, overall, I think everyone's happy with the book, apart from when my sister takes some of the pictures that I chose to include. I think that was the biggest, I think that was the only thing that I was most worried about. I was like, my sisters are going to disown me when they've seen I put like old school photos in the book with our awful haircut.
Was it the one with the Motability scooter and you nearly crashed it?
Oh, yes. That was another one. Yeah.
Okay, you just mentioned grief there. I mean, how did you cope then with the loss of both parents. No one teaches us how to grieve. How do you deal with that?
I think exactly like you've just said, nobody really teaches us. And so that tends to make you retreat into yourself because you think, oh, I must be the only one. No one else is really talking about this. And I think what I wasn't prepared for is, you know, the kind of the Hollywood take on grief. You see the funeral scene, they're shedding a few tears, and then it kind of like fast forwards to 3 months later and they're off doing something else. And so I thought that grief was linear like that, and it most definitely isn't. And, you know, it just keeps coming in waves. And, you know, I used to think, oh, why, you know, I haven't made any progress. I'm no further through my grief because it keeps coming back. But I understand now it's almost as if your brain can't process it all at one time. So it just brings you a little bit. Then it's like, okay, deal with that. Okay, now here's a little bit more, and you have to work through the grief in bite-sized chunks. And I know in the book, I've kind of said for me, I was expecting grief to be one big light bulb moment. And I went on juicing retreats and saw psychics and all sorts, hoping that I would just do this one magic thing and then the grief would go and I'd feel okay. And I realize now it's not about the one big light bulb moment. It's instead about almost like a string of fairy lights. And you just have to keep painstakingly one tiny bulb at a time, keep lighting it. And then one day you'll suddenly look back and you'll be like, oh, wow, actually, there is a lot of light in my life again. It's just you don't necessarily realize it as you go along.
Okay. Then after the grief, after the caring role had finished, how did you cope then with the big gap that was left behind?
I think at first my plan was go back to how life was before. I was like, right, yes, move back up north, just get a normal job like everybody else, almost kind of trick myself into thinking everything was okay. And I did that for a while. And then I kind of realized the more I try to pretend everything's normal, the more I'm realizing what's missing. You know, it would be going to work and they'd be like, oh, you know, going back to your parents for Christmas, or, oh, you know, this, that, or the other, or, you know, I'd hear people at work and they'd be like, oh, you know, my washing machine's broken, but so my mum's going to come round and pick my washing up and do that for me until I can get a new one. And it's all those tiny moments that cut you so deep. So I think I had to learn to, I guess, kind of be honest with myself that, you know, it has happened. So it's almost how do you learn to walk again? You know, you can't just get straight up and start running. You have to learn, okay, I'm going to have to crawl at first, but it's fine, I'm still moving forward, and, you know, just take it very gradually.
Okay. I mean, have you looked at exploring in retrospect, designing a roadmap which would have helped you and which you can now recommend to other carers?
I have thought about it, but then I think it wouldn't be a roadmap, it would just be a massive spiral. Because I think for me in grief, you think, oh, I'm going around in circles, I'm crying again over that Christmas, or I'm crying again over, you know, the fact that my parents aren't here for my birthday or something. But now I realize you're not going around in circles, you're moving up the spiral, you are making progress. And even then with the spiral, sometimes those waves are going to come and completely knock you off the spiral, and then you start up again. And I think so much of grieving for me has just been in that acceptance. There's no time limit, there's no pattern, there's no logic. It's going to be the most random thing that will set you off. You know, it's going to be, I know I've done it walking through M&S only just trying to get to the food hall to get a sandwich for my lunch, and then just seen a top that my mum would have loved and gone, oh, I'll get that for, and then all of a sudden it all comes back and you think, hang on a minute, I've walked in here so happy, ready to get myself a sandwich, and I've walked out in floods of tears. And I think the longer it goes on, the more you just accept, actually, that is what grief is. That is doing grief right. That's not doing it wrong, that is doing it right. And that's going to happen for the rest of your life. It kind of takes the pressure off.
With that in mind, then, what can an organisation like Bolton Carer Support offer carers to make their journey easier?
I think going back to what you were saying about carers so often feeling unseen, undervalued, genuinely providing a space where they know they're going to be listened to and validated. Because I think so often when you become a carer, you become someone else's voice and lose your own in turn, and you become Mr. Blah Blah's carer or Mrs. Blah Blah's carer, and all your focus is on them. How are they okay? So to have a space that acknowledges it's difficult to be a carer. Yeah, I'm not surprised you're struggling. You're doing so much. Yeah, that is really difficult. No, you're not overreacting. That's too much for anyone. Just, it sounds so simple. I think I really missed that in my caring journey, of someone just, people were so quick to say, just think positive, or like, your mum's a fighter. And it just felt so invalidating, because it's like, no, I'm not saying I'm not positive. I'm not saying, oh, I'm not going to be positive because I can't be bothered to make her okay. I'm saying, this is really difficult. I had no idea. I'm struggling. Why are there so many forms to fill out for a blue parking badge? Why is it so difficult to get the right council tax adjustment? And I think just having a space where that's understood and you don't, and just listen to and not push back with, oh, just think positive, or oh, why don't you try this, or oh, have you thought of that? All those things I'm sure every carer has heard 100 times before. I think, it sounds simple, but it means so much.
Okay. And one final question: what does the future hold for Rochelle?
Who knows? I think, going back to what we were saying earlier about raising awareness, I would love to be able to adapt my book to TV or film and just give a real insight of what it is really like day to day, to let everybody know. Because like you say, I think 2 and 3 of us are going to become carers at some point in our life. And so the more we speak about it, the more we open up conversations and normalize being able to share that this is difficult or this is really rewarding. It's something that I'm really, really passionate about. So yeah, we will see, maybe another book, who knows?
Or maybe a film.
Yes.
I mean,
I know. Who would I need to play me? That would be my main concern. Be like, sorry, can we get someone really pretty? Thank you. Otherwise I'm not signing.
I'd love to continue, Rochelle, but we've run out of time.
No worries. Thank you so much.
No, I really enjoyed the conversation. It's been very heartfelt and revealing, and I think we could go on for another hour or two and go much deeper. A special thanks to you for taking time out this evening and exploring this topic. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our platform. For those of you, no, thank you. For those of you who would like to have more information about the services we offer, please visit our website at www.boltoncarers.org.uk. Feel free to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and click the subscribe button on YouTube to stay updated for future videos. We welcome any donations, large or small, as it all helps our work with local carers. You may want to ask for donations instead of gifts at a special birthday or anniversary, or you may want to make a donation in memory of a loved one. There's an easy way to donate £5 to Bolton Carer Support by text. It's simple, fast, and there are 2 easy steps. Firstly, write the text message BCSWITHCARE and send the message to 70085. That's 70085. The donation is deducted from your mobile phone credits or added to your mobile phone bill. The day after, you will be asked if you wish to make a regular donation of £5. It is entirely your choice if you wish to set this up. Please note that text costs £5 plus 1 standard rate message, and you'll be opting to hear more about our work and fundraising via telephone and SMS. If you'd like to give £5 but do not wish to receive marketing communications, text PCS WITHCARENOINFO to 70085. I hope you have a lovely evening. Stay safe. Good night.